And that is, of course, the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who has said that the British government should apologise for the Jallianwala Bagh massacre in India's Amritsar. Khan, who arrived in Amritsar on Tuesday, paid tribute to the martyrs of the massacre in Amritsar. He also visited the Golden Temple complex, which is the holiest of Sikh shrines. He offered prayers there and thereafter told the media after visiting the Jallianwala Bagh complex that the British government should apologise for the massacre that claimed hundreds of lives.
It was important for me also to come to Jallianwala Bagh. We all know the history here in 1919, on the eve of their Vaisakhi celebrations. Indians, Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims and others were peacefully protesting against the British rule, and in response to that peaceful protest and the Rowlatt Act, General Dyer and British soldiers closed the gates in the thin alleyway and opened fire on men, women and children. And I've seen the well for myself, where the women and children fled and eventually died. And my view is that the British government should apologise for the Jallianwala Bagh shootings. Some people use the word massacre, and it's important to apologise for the errors done in the past.
Now, hundreds of innocent Indians, including women and children, as well as the elderly, were shot dead by British troops led by Brigadier General Reginald Dyer on April 13, 1919. The victims had no place to escape to, as the only narrow entrance and exit point was blocked by the troops. Colonial-era records had put the death toll to around 400, while leaders of the country's freedom movement had put it to over 1,000. Though the British monarch, Queen Elizabeth, and her husband, Prince Philip, visited Jallianwala in October 1997, no apology for the massacre was offered back then. Thereafter, the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, visited Jallianwala Bagh in February 2013 and offered regrets over the killings, stopping short of a formal apology. And joining us this evening is the noted author and historian William Dalrymple. He's joining us live from New Delhi. William, good evening. Thanks so much for speaking with us here at WION. Appreciate you taking out the time. Do you agree with the London Mayor Sadiq Khan? Should the British government apologise?
Well, I think it's something that should be apologised for, but I'm always worried when politicians start making apologies for things they didn't do. I mean, I think, Tony Blair should apologise for Iraq, George Bush should apologise for invading all these different countries, but this was something that happened in the distant past. I think much better is to teach this history, to teach British kids of all the things that the massacres British committed all over the world. Here in Delhi, tens of thousands were massacred, far worse scale of massacre than ever took place in Jallianwala Bagh took place here in 1857, and these things are simply not taught, they're not remembered. And the British Empire as a whole and all the things, all the wicked things that took place simply do not feature in British syllabuses. And I think unless the British people learn these things at school, we'll never learn the lessons of empire. We'll never learn the full scale of the horrors that happened. And I think, in a sense, for a politician on a trip to raise funds for London, apologising is very easy, but it's also political expediency. I think you have to go far deeper than that and redress the roots to this problem. Is that simply that the British don't remember the things that they once did.
All right. If it does happen, though, if the apology does come about, do you think it'll reflect real regret for the massacre?
Do I think what?
Do you think it'll reflect real regret for the massacre?
Well, I think, as I say, people, the British committed massacres all over India at many occasions, and this is something that people simply don't realise in Britain. So no, I don't think there's much regret because people are simply unaware of these things. Jallianwala Bagh is one example of something that is remembered, at least in the movie Gandhi, and people who've seen that know about it. But I think you need a massive educational campaign, and it should be something that British students should learn as part of their education. It's a very important thing for them to know. And unless there is education, there can't be any real regret. As I say, I'm suspicious of politicians who, on fundraising trips, start making apologies for things they didn't do, because it does seem like expediency. It doesn't feel like a real contrition. I think there are things you can do, setting aside education and reading programs, which would show a much more profound understanding of grappling with this problem.
Right. We're seeing all kinds of movements, William. In the United States, of course, there's this whole program toward taking down Confederate statues, for instance. We've seen Australia apologizing for the ills done to the Aborigines in the past in 2008. But is retrospection a very tricky path to walk? Because as there will be apologies that are demanded, do thank yous also come up then?
I think that rather than taking these statues down, they are part of history. I think what's important is to educate people so that they understand. So when you have a racist Civil War general who kept slaves and was fighting to keep the slave trade going, I think much better than removing the statue and forgetting these people is to put a plaque up explaining what they did, explaining about the slave trade and educating people. So I'm all for not erasing the past, but educating people about it. That's my view.
All right. William Dalrymple, thanks very much for joining us this evening and sharing your perspective with us on that story. We'll keep track, of course, on whether the United Kingdom decides on issuing an apology for that massacre that took place on the 13th of April, 1919.